I transmigrated as the Empire's most broke Saintess and decided to scam God. I died. Again. This time, it was from tripping over my own student loans. When I opened my eyes, I wasn't in a hospital. I was Elara Solon, the beloved Saintess from the novel The Crown's Thorn. In the book, the Saintess is revered, pure, and legally broke. The temple takes every donation. She owns absolutely nothing. And in chapter 12, she dies from something called divine exhaustion after healing the male lead's entire army for free. I read that chapter and immediately said, absolutely not. I did not survive capitalism just to perform unpaid labor for God. In my previous life, I was 29 years old, a gig worker. I had 3 jobs and still couldn't afford therapy. Then I died while muttering, at least I'm out of the group chat. Now I'm 20 years old, Saintess of the Sun Temple. My power, completely overpowered healing magic. My bank account, 0. My legal property, the white robe on my back. According to temple law, a saintess must possess no worldly attachments. Unfortunately, I knew exactly what was coming. In 3 months, a war would break out. I would heal 10,000 soldiers, collapse from exhaustion, and die. The temple would call it a blessing. I called it wage theft. If the law says I can't own anything, then fine. The church can own things. And as far as I'm concerned, I am the church now. The morning after I woke up, I was greeted by chanting nuns and a high priest offering me a loaf of bread. Blessed Saintess, he said, you must conserve your strength for the people. I accepted the bread. Then I asked, cool. Where's the ledger for temple donations? The high priest blinked. Why? For blessings. I smiled. Financial blessings? God loves receipts. That's when I discovered the temple earns millions of gold every year from nobles purchasing miracles. None of that money goes to me. You know, the actual miracle dispenser. Instead, it all disappears into something called temple maintenance, which coincidentally seems to fund the high priest's 3rd summer villa. So let me get this straight. I'm the product, the labor, and the marketing team. Fantastic. Now, I couldn't marry for money. Saintesses had to remain pure. I couldn't own land. But the temple could. And the temple happened to need a new high priest. Preferably one who wasn't embezzling donations. Preferably me. There was just one problem. Only men could become high priest. Apparently, that was divine law. Cute. Laws written by men who rarely lived past 40. Fine, new plan. Become the power behind the throne. Legalize female clergy later. First, I needed a figurehead. Someone famous enough to gain public trust. Someone obedient enough to follow instructions. And someone indebted enough not to betray me. That's when I met Sir Cale Riven. The Empire's shield, 24 years old. War hero, golden retriever trapped inside a suit of armor, and currently dying from a cursed wound. In the original story, I heal him. He dedicates his life to me, then watches me die from overwork. We were changing that ending. I called the operation, Tax Heaven, Step 1. The miracle with terms and conditions. I entered Cale's sick room. Priests surrounded the bed, already preparing to watch me sacrifice half my lifespan to save him. I knelt. Golden light filled the room, then I stopped halfway. Cale frowned. Saintess? I raised my hand dramatically. The sun god speaks. The room went silent. He declares that Sir Riven's life is precious. I paused. And temple corruption has displeased him. Several priests nearly choked. To complete this healing, I continued, the temple must appoint a high priest who serves the people instead of gold. The current high priest immediately protested. That is not. God also says financial transparency is holy. I pointed upward. Look, his light made a spreadsheet. The crowd lost its collective mind. Meanwhile, Cale sat upright for the first time in weeks and stared at me like I had personally hung the moon in the sky. Name your priest, Saintess, he said. I will carry out his will. I smiled. I nominate you. Cale blinked. I'm a knight? God just transferred you to human resources. I shrugged. Don't question promotions. Step 2. The coup, but holy. Officially, I trained Cale to become high priest. Unofficially, I ran the temple while he stood nearby, looking heroic. The first decree was simple. The Saintess would oversee all donations. The second decree was even better. The Saintess would receive a salary. A very large salary. After all, God understands inflation. The third decree changed everything. Healing the army became a government contract. The Empire would pay per soldier healed. Net 30 terms. The old high priest tried to object. Cale simply folded his arms. Are you questioning the sun god's spreadsheet? The man retired shortly afterward, to a farm, where he could grow humility. Step 3. The war and the invoice. When war finally arrived, the emperor requested aid. I arrived with Cale and 100 fully trained temple healers. Then, I placed a contract directly onto the war table. Standard rate. 50 gold per soldier healed. I flipped the page. Bulk discount available after 10,000 units. Another page. Payment required upfront. The generals looked horrified. One finally sputtered. This is outrageous. The last Saintess would never have died. I cut him off. I read her reviews. I folded my arms. 1 star, overworked, underpaid, would not resurrect again. The room fell silent. Then I asked, do you want tradition? Or do you want your army? The emperor signed immediately, and just like that, I became the first Saintess in history with a sovereign wealth fund. The funny thing about Kahl was that everyone assumed he was a lovable idiot. Then one night, I found him rewriting temple law at 2 a.m. I stared. You can read? Kahl looked offended. I was a general, Ilara. He slid a document across the desk. I just let people underestimate me. It's safer. Then he pointed to a new clause. The Saintess may own property if it serves the purpose of sustaining divine works. I looked up. He smiled. I classified your bedroom as a divine work zone. I blinked. You've been planning this? Since the day you healed my finger and called the high priest a fraud with a hat. He leaned back. I figured anyone willing to negotiate with God was worth protecting. And that was the moment I realized something. Kahl never asked me to stay pure. He never asked me to sacrifice myself. He only asked one thing. That I get paid. 3 years later, everything had changed. The temple operated the largest healthcare network in the empire. I owned 2 banks, 1 vineyard, and an entire mountain where divine visions supposedly occurred. Turns out, visions are much easier to schedule when you own the mountain. Kahl remained the official high priest. Unofficially, he was my enforcer. Whenever nobles complained about prices, he smiled politely and said, the Saintess's light is free. Her time is not. Then he'd add, would you like to speak with her accountant? He's terrifying. As for me, I never got married. Officially, the Saintess remained devoted to the people. Unofficially, the high priest's chambers happened to share a connecting door with mine. For emergency prayer sessions, every night, for approximately 3 hours. In my last life, I died exhausted and broke. In this one, I'm wealthy, well-rested. And the war hero I accidentally scammed into the priesthood keeps trying to tithe me kisses. The temple is profitable. God still hasn't smote me. And for the first time in 2 lifetimes, I have dental coverage. 11 out of 10 transmigration experience would absolutely commit holy tax fraud again.